What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing.
What if everything you thought you knew about professional basketball was a lie? What if the last-second shots, the shocking injuries, and the surprising upsets weren't always a matter of chance or skill? On a crisp October morning in 2025, the world of sports was hit with an earthquake so powerful, it threatened to tear down the entire multi-billion-dollar empire of the NBA. This isn't just a story about gambling. This is a story about organized crime, high-stakes deception, and the stunning arrest that exposed a rotten core at the very heart of America's most beloved sports leagues.
We're here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Casa Nostra.
What you're about to hear will change how you see the game forever. It all began just after dawn on October 23rd, 2025, in quiet, wealthy suburbs and in luxury hotel rooms across 11 different states. The silence was shattered by the sound of knocking doors and FBI agents in tactical gear. This wasn't a targeted strike on a single city. This was a coordinated nationwide takedown. Their targets were not the usual suspects, but some of the most famous and respected names in basketball history. Hall of Famers, current coaches of iconic franchises, and star players in the prime of their careers were read their rights and taken into custody. The basketball world watched in real time as social media feeds exploded with mugshots of faces they recognized from championship parades and all-star games. The charges being unsealed that morning were almost too large to comprehend.
And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation.
Tens of millions of dollars in fraud. Games rigged from the inside. And most shockingly, the alleged involvement of four notorious mafia families, secretly pulling the strings from the shadows. This was the end of basketball as we knew it. Federal prosecutors in New York called it Operation Nothing But Net, a name that would soon become synonymous with the biggest scandal in sports history. They announced the arrest of over 30 individuals, revealing two interconnected criminal schemes that operated with the precision of a Fortune 500 company. The first was an insider sports betting ring, a sophisticated operation where non-public information was currency. We're talking about advanced knowledge of player injuries, secret tanking strategies, and even the exact minute a star would exit a game with a fabricated ailment. This information was then used to place massive, guaranteed win bets on offshore gambling sites, completely beyond the reach of U.S. regulators. But that was only the beginning. Woven into this web of corruption was a second, even more brazen scheme, a high-stakes, rigged poker ring that was fully backed and operated by the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families.
Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime.
For years, these two worlds, the bright lights of the NBA and the dark underbelly of organized crime, had been secretly merging, and the results were absolutely mind-blowing. The mugshots told a story of stunning betrayal. Among the most shocking was Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. To fans, he was Mr. Big Shot, a Hall of Famer, a Finals MVP, and the epitome of clutch performance and integrity. But according to the FBI, Billups was a key player in the criminal enterprise. He was accused of participating in mafia-backed poker games, using his celebrity status to lure wealthy victims into a rig system. Even more damaging were the allegations that he provided insider information about his own team's plans to lose games intentionally during the 2023 season, a strategy known as tanking, so his accomplices could bet against the Trail Blazers with absolute certainty. Then there was Terry Rozier, the dynamic guard for the Miami Heat. Just a year earlier, he had signed a contract worth nearly $100 million, a life-changing amount of money that should have secured his future. Yet, court documents allege that Rozier was deeply involved in the spot-fixing scheme. He was accused of sharing confidential information about his own health and the condition of other players. The charges stated that on at least 7 different games, he either faked an injury or exaggerated a minor one to exit early, ensuring that prop bets on his performance would hit. His actions allegedly impacted games involving the Hornets, Magic, Lakers, and Raptors, proving this was a league-wide infection. Completing the trio of fallen stars was Damon Jones, a former NBA champion with the Cleveland Cavaliers who had transitioned into a coaching role. Jones found himself facing charges from both schemes. He was accused of selling priceless insider information about the health of superstars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis during critical 2023 Lakers games.
Between December 2022 and March 2024, these defendants perpetrated a scheme to defraud by betting on inside, non-public information about NBA athletes and teams. The non-public information included when specific players would be sitting out future games, or when they would pull themselves out early for purported injuries or illnesses.
At the same time, he was a regular participant in the criminal poker ring, allegedly attending over 10 games where his championship pedigree was used to build trust with victims who had no idea the entire game was designed to fleece them. But how did they actually pull it off? The mechanics of the insider betting ring were as simple as they were devastating. It only required three things: a source with confidential information, a network of bettors ready to place huge wagers, and an unregulated offshore betting platform. The method was known as spot fixing, manipulating a specific moment within a game without necessarily changing the final outcome, making it incredibly difficult to detect. Let's look at two chilling examples. On March 23rd, 2023, Terry Rozier was playing for the Charlotte Hornets against the Chicago Bulls. After just 9 minutes on the court, he suddenly exited the game, citing a foot injury. He finished with only 3 points. That very night, over $150,000 was wagered on Rozier scoring under 20.5 points. His early exit guaranteed those bets would win, netting the conspirators a clean $17,000 in profit from a single manufactured moment. The very next day, the scheme grew even more audacious. Coach Chauncey Billups, according to prosecutors, shared the Portland Trail Blazers' secret tanking plans with his co-conspirators. He told them that the team's superstar, Damian Lillard, would be strategically benched for the upcoming game against the Bulls to secure a better draft position. With this non-public knowledge, the group placed $80,000 on the Trail Blazers to lose.
Among these defendants are 13 members and associates of the Bonanno, Gambino, and Genovese crime families, to include capos and soldiers from these families. Additionally, as you heard, current and former NBA coaches and players are also implicated, to include Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier.
Portland went on to lose by 28 points, and the bets paid out massively. This was no longer just gambling on sports. It was a guaranteed investment scheme built on betrayal of the sport itself. While the betting scandal was corrupting the game on the court, a separate but connected operation was targeting the ultra-wealthy in plush, private settings. The rigged poker scheme was a masterpiece of criminal ingenuity, running from 2019 all the way up to the 2025 bust. These weren't games held in back alleys. They took place in multi-million-dollar mansions in the Hamptons, luxury suites in Las Vegas, and penthouses in Miami. The buy-in for a single seat could reach $1 million. To cheat, the conspirators used technology straight out of a spy movie. They had card shufflers modified with hidden cameras, tables equipped with X-ray technology to see through the cards, and specially marked decks that required special contact lenses to read. The house would then systematically skim between 10 and 20% of every pot, generating a river of illicit cash.
Proud to stand here today with the men and women of the FBI and this legal team. And to the United States Attorney, I just want to thank you personally for taking the time to display the work that the media is about to hear about today in detail. As I said, it does take courageous prosecutors, but it takes a courageous United States Attorney to bring this case, because we are going to take heat for it.
The key to luring in these wealthy victims was the presence of what the criminals called face cards, the recognizable NBA celebrities. Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones weren't just participants. They were the centerpiece of the entire deceptive operation. Their presence was the ultimate psychological weapon, transforming a suspicious, high-stakes underground game into what appeared to be an exclusive, star-studded gathering for the elite. A wealthy businessman, tech entrepreneur, or influencer wouldn't just jump at the chance to sit at a table with an NBA Hall of Famer. They would feel honored, believing they had been granted access to an inner circle of fame and success. This was a meticulously crafted illusion that made the entire con possible. The setup was pure genius in its deception. The games were never presented as a surefire way to win. In fact, the opposite was often true. To build authenticity, the NBA face cards like Billups and Jones would sometimes lose significant amount of money themselves early in the evening. This wasn't a loss of the house, of course. It was a calculated investment. Seeing a celebrated champion like Billups take a bad beat or bluff unsuccessfully created a powerful sense of normalcy and fair play. It made the wealthy victims let their guard down, thinking, if a basketball legend can lose here, then the game must be honest. This false sense of security was a trapdoor that led to their financial ruin. The locations themselves were chosen to reinforce this aura of legitimacy and exclusivity. We're not talking about smoky backrooms. These were gatherings in multi-million-dollar Hamptons estates with panoramic ocean views, in opulent Las Vegas sky villas that cost more per night than most people make in a year, and in private penthouses in Manhattan that required special elevator access. The environment was dripping with wealth and sophistication, making the idea of a rigged game seem absurd. The victims were wined and dined, made to feel like they were part of secret society. The conspirators understood that when you're surrounded by such overt signs of success and luxury, your brain is less likely to register the subtle signs of a con. But beneath the surface of this glamorous facade was a cold, calculating machine. The face cards had a very specific role beyond just showing up. They were masterful at building rapport. Damon Jones, with his championship stories from Cleveland, would disarm targets with charisma. Chauncey Billups, Mr. Big Shot, would command respect with his quiet intensity and basketball IQ, which he subtly translated into seeming poker acumen. They would learn personal details about the marks, their businesses, their families, their hobbies, and use that information to create a fake friendship, a bond that made the victim less likely to suspect foul play when their fortune began to disappear across the felt table. And when the losses inevitably mounted, the entire tone of the operation would shift. The friendly game among elites was over. This is where the second layer of the trap was revealed. The mafia enforcers, who had been posing as fellow players or silent security, would make their presence known. The victim, who moments before was sharing laughs with an NBA legend, would now be confronted with the grim reality of their situation. The threats weren't always loud, but they were deadly serious. A quiet conversation in the corner of the room, a hand on the shoulder, a mention of knowing where their children went to school. The psychological whiplash was devastating. The very celebrity who had drawn them in now seemed like a pawn in a much darker game, leaving the victim isolated, terrified, and financially obliterated. Over 50 of these gaming sessions were held, drawing in over 100 victims and leading to direct losses of over $7 million, with an additional $20 million laundered through shell companies and cryptocurrency wallets, all built on the broken trust of those who thought they were rubbing shoulders with greatness. None of this would have been possible without the muscle, the connections, and the sheer intimidation of organized crime. The indictments named 13 made members and associates of the Bonanno, Gambino, and Genovese families, including capos and soldiers. But this wasn't just a loose collection of thugs. It was a corporate structure of criminality. Each family had a designated role, a piece of the multi-million-dollar pie. The Genovese family was heavily involved in the sophisticated money laundering, using a network of shell companies and cryptocurrency tumblers to make the illicit profits from the poker games and sports bets vanish into thin air. The Gambino family provided the logistical muscle, securing the luxurious locations and ensuring no uninvited guests interfered with their high-stakes operations. These crime families provided the essential enforcement that kept the entire enterprise sealed in silence. When a victim accumulated debts they couldn't pay, or worse, threatened to go to the police, the mafia enforcers stepped in. Their methods were chillingly effective, designed to inflict maximum psychological terror. It wasn't always a direct and violent confrontation. Sometimes it was a series of anonymous late-night phone calls. Other times, it was a friendly-looking man showing up at a victim's place of business to have a quiet, yet deeply menacing conversation about the importance of meeting one's financial obligations. The goal was always the same: to create a climate of fear so palpable that going to the authorities seemed like a more dangerous option than just paying up and staying quiet. Court documents detail one instance where a victim was robbed at gunpoint and forced to hand over $500,000 worth of jewelry to cover a debt. In other cases, threats of physical harm were made against the victims and their families. This was the dark reality behind the glamorous facade, a system of coercion and fear that ensured silence and compliance. The wealthy businessmen and influencers, who were used to being in control, found themselves utterly powerless against an organization that operated outside the bounds of law and morality. The presence of these crime families turned a fraudulent scheme into an inescapable trap, where the only way out was to pay a devastating price. The fallout from the October 23rd arrest was immediate and severe, sending shockwaves through the entire sports and entertainment industry. The affected teams, like the Trailblazers and the Heat, saw an instant decline in fan support. Ticket sales for Portland's season opener showed 10% of seats unsold, a glaring indicator of broken trust. Merchandise sales for Terry Rozier's jersey plummeted by 15% in a single month. The financial partners of the NBA also took a major hit. Stocks for betting giants DraftKings and FanDuel, which had billion-dollar partnerships with the league, fell sharply as investors feared a massive public and regulatory backlash against sports gambling. This scandal didn't emerge from a vacuum. It was in many ways a repeat of a warning the league failed to heed. Just a year earlier, in 2024, Toronto Raptors player Jontay Porter was given a lifetime ban after an investigation found he had manipulated prop bets to pay off his own massive gambling debts. Porter's case was a blueprint. He would exit games early, claiming mysterious eye injuries or illnesses, just as Rozier was now accused of doing. On one specific night, Porter played only 4 minutes before leaving the game, resulting in over $200,000 in bets on his underperformance, cashing for a $750,000 profit for his handlers. The Porter case proved that players, especially younger ones on smaller contracts, were vulnerable to coercion. The 2025 scandal showed this vulnerability had been exploited on an industrial, mafia-backed scale. So, where does the NBA go from here? The league now stands at a crossroads more perilous than any in its modern history. Commissioner Adam Silver, who had been one of the strongest advocates for the legalization and normalization of sports betting, suddenly finds his legacy inextricably linked to this crisis. In a stunning reversal, he is now the leading voice calling for strict federal oversight of the very industry he once championed. The bitter irony is undeniable. The massive legalized sports betting ecosystem he helped bring into the light was now responsible for casting the darkest shadow over the league's integrity. The fundamental relationship between sports and gambling has been exposed as deeply flawed and dangerously corruptible, and the path to repair is fraught with difficult choices. The proposed solutions are as drastic as the situation demands. The most widely discussed is a potential ban on player prop bets. These wagers on individual player performances, like how many points Terry Rozier will score or how many rebounds Jontay Porter will collect, are the lifeblood of the corruption. They're the most easily manipulated by a single player or coach. States like Ontario, Canada, already banned NBA player prop bets following the Porter case. And now, legislators in multiple U.S. states are drafting similar bills. This would be a monumental financial hit, costing the leagues and sports books hundreds of millions in annual revenue. But the league may now see it as a necessary amputation to save the body of the sport. The question is whether the financial pain is too great for the league and its partners to willingly accept. Beyond outright bans, the NBA is being pushed toward an unprecedented level of internal surveillance and control. The league has implemented mandatory gambling education and expanded its partnership with monitoring firms like U.S. Integrity. But these measures were clearly not enough. The future likely holds much more invasive protocols. We could see the NBA demanding access to player and coach financial records to flag suspicious debts or large cash inflows. There could be strict, monitored limits on personal associations, effectively barring players and staff from contact with known gambling influencers or individuals tied to organized crime. The players' union will fiercely resist what they see as an infringement on personal freedoms, but the league will argue that the survival of the sport demands such drastic steps. This crisis also forces a painful reevaluation of the league's incredibly lucrative partnerships with betting companies like DraftKings and FanDuel. Those billion-dollar deals, which put betting kiosks in arenas and gambling ads on jerseys, now look like a deal with the devil. The league cannot easily unwind these partnerships without triggering massive financial consequences, but the public perception has soured. We may see a quiet distancing, a reduction in betting ads during broadcasts, the removal of betting logos from court signage, and a strategic pivot to emphasize official data provider relationships over outright gambling promotion. The league must perform a delicate balancing act, maintaining the revenue stream while publicly demonstrating that it is not in bed with the industry that nearly destroyed it. Historically, other sports have faced similar existential threats and emerged, but not without profound change. The 1919 Black Sox scandal led to the creation of a powerful commissioner's office in baseball to ruthlessly police the game. The 2007 Tim Donaghy scandal forced the NBA to overhaul its entire referee oversight program. This current scandal is arguably larger than both, as it involves the players and coaches themselves, the very protagonists of the sport. The solution will likely require a similar, but far more expansive, structural overhaul. There are growing calls for the creation of an independent, federal-level sports integrity commission with the power to monitor betting patterns across state lines, subpoena records, and investigate corruption across all professional leagues. Adam Silver's push for federal oversight is an admission that the problem has grown too large for any single league to manage on its own. Ultimately, the most significant challenge is not regulatory or financial, it is philosophical. For years, the NBA and other leagues sold the public on the idea that legalization would bring gambling out of the shadows, making it safer and more transparent. This scandal proves that the shadows simply moved, finding new vulnerabilities within the system itself. The league must now answer a fundamental question it has avoided for a decade. Can a sports league whose primary product is unpredictable competition ever safely coexist with an industry that profits by predicting and influencing that same competition? The trust of the fan is the NBA's most valuable asset. Every missed shot, every curious injury, and every baffling coaching decision will now be viewed through a lens of suspicion. Rebuilding that trust will require more than new rules and monitoring systems. It will require a genuine cultural reckoning that places the purity of the game above the allure of easy money. The era of unchecked gambling expansion is over. The future of the NBA depends on what it builds from the ashes. The story of Operation Nothing, but net is more than a list of crimes and arrests. It's a tragic fall from grace for legends of the game, a cautionary tale about the corrosive power of greed, and a stark warning about what happens when the worlds of elite sports and organized crime collide. The three men at the center of this storm, Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, and Damon Jones, now face the prospect of decades in federal prison if convicted. Their legacies, once defined by championship glory, are now permanently shadowed by allegations of fraud and conspiracy. This scandal has exposed a chilling new reality. This wasn't just players placing bets. It was a sophisticated, technologically advanced criminal enterprise. The FBI alleges the conspirators used methods straight out of a spy movie. Poker tables fitted with X-ray technology to read face-down cards, rigged shuffling machines that predicted winning hands, and special contact lenses to read marked decks. This wasn't a low-level operation. It was backed by the muscle and intimidation of four of New York's 5 major mafia families, the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families, who provided enforcement and laundered the profits. When victims couldn't pay their debts, the mob stepped in with threats, intimidation, and even violence, including a punch to the face and an armed robbery. The NBA, a global entertainment powerhouse, must now undertake the painful and public process of rebuilding the trust of millions of fans. This scandal strikes directly at the integrity of the game itself. When a star like Terry Rozier allegedly exits the game after just 9 minutes, generating tens of thousands in profits for his co-conspirators, it makes you question every sudden injury, every questionable coaching decision, and every unexpected loss. This scandal has been described as an insider trading saga for the NBA. And just like in the financial world, it shatters a fundamental belief that the competition is fair and authentic. This is a watershed moment for the league. It forces a brutal reevaluation of the NBA's deep and financially lucrative partnerships with the legalized sports betting industry. The very system that was supposed to bring gambling out of shadows has now created new, more sophisticated avenues for corruption. Rebuilding trust will require more than just lifetime bans for players like Jonte Porter. It will demand unprecedented transparency, ruthless internal policing, and potential rethinking of its relationship with the gambling world. So, we turn it over to you. What does the NBA need to do to win back your trust? Should the league ban player prop bets entirely, making it harder for individuals to manipulate small parts of a game? Does there need to be a federal oversight body to monitor sport integrity? How can a game protect its players and staff from the insidious pressures of organized crime? Let us know your solutions in the comments below. If this story shocked you, if it made you question everything you see during an NBA broadcast, then let us know in the comments below. What do you think is the solution to this deep-rooted problem? And make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we uncover the stories that change how you see the world. Thanks for watching.